The room was quiet. Too quiet. Only a soft hum of night wind touched the small home made of stone and wood. In the center of the room stood a cradle. It was carved with care, polished smooth by loving hands. Once it held life. Once it held hope. Now it was empty. The mother sat beside it, her long arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes were fixed on the cradle, though there was nothing inside. Her lips moved, slow and trembling, carrying a song into the silent air. It was a lullaby, soft, gentle, but every note carried pain. She sang not to comfort a child. She sang to remember one. Her voice shook. Sometimes it cracked, but still she sang. She had sung the same song every night since her baby was taken. Neighbors whispered about her. Some said she was lost to grief. Some said she was mad. But still she sang, because deep inside she refused to believe her daughter was gone forever. The mother's name was Lyra. She belonged to a proud people, tall and graceful, their skin faintly glowing under starlight. Her people had lived through war, hunger, and exile, but nothing had broken Lyra like the day her baby vanished. It happened during chaos. Soldiers marched, battles raged, and families fled their burning homes. In the panic, her child was gone. Some said raiders took her. Others said the child was lost to the fire. But no proof ever came. No body, no farewell. Only silence, and silence was worse than death. Each night Lyra returned to the cradle. She touched its edges. She remembered the way her baby's tiny fingers once curled around her own. She remembered the sound of small breaths, the warmth of new life. The cradle was empty, but in her mind it was not. Her song floated like smoke in the room, soft words in her language full of sorrow and longing. She imagined her child still listening, somewhere far away. Maybe the stars carried the sound. Maybe the baby could hear. Outside, the world moved on. Her people told her to accept the loss. The child is gone, they said. Time will heal you. But time did not heal. Time made the wound deeper, because with every sunrise her baby was still missing, and every sunset brought no answers. So Lyra clung to the cradle. To the song. To the hope that someday somehow she would see her child again. But hope was heavy. Sometimes in the middle of her lullaby she broke down. Her hands shook. Tears wet her face. She would whisper into the cradle begging, "Come back. Please come back." Her voice was so small it was almost swallowed by the dark. The cradle creaked as she rocked it with one hand, though it was empty. The sound of wood moving on stone floor was lonely, like a ghost of what once was. Yet even in her weakest moments she refused to stop singing. Because if she stopped, it meant she believed. Believed the whispers, believed the lies, believed her child was gone forever. And that she could never do. Her song was her rebellion. Her song was her weapon against despair. Some nights shadows pressed against the walls of her home. Memories of war. Memories of fire. Faces of soldiers she hated. Faces of humans. Humans, the other side. The enemy. She spat the word in her mind whenever she thought of them. She had lost her child because of their war. Their greed. Their endless hunger for more. If she ever saw a human near her again, she swore she would kill them with her bare hands. But tonight, the house was still. Her voice filled the silence. The stars outside shone cold and distant. Her lullaby rose higher, breaking for a moment into raw cry before falling back into soft song. The cradle sat quietly, empty, waiting. And somewhere deep inside, Lyra felt it. Something was about to change. The air seemed heavier tonight, as though listening. The silence after her song ended was not normal silence. It was thicker, filled with something unseen. Her heart beat faster. Her eyes darted to the door. She shook her head. No, it was nothing. Just grief playing tricks again. Still, she reached for the small blade she kept beside her. Her fingers curled around its handle, though her knuckles trembled. The cradle rocked once more as if touched by a wind, but there was no wind. Lyra closed her eyes. She whispered the last line of her song into the stillness, her voice breaking into tears. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to the cradle. The cradle was cold, empty, silent. But outside her door, footsteps were coming. The footsteps faded into silence that night. No one came through the door. No one answered her trembling heart. When morning arrived, Lyra found only emptiness waiting for her again. Grief was her companion now. It lived in the corners of her home. It breathed in the walls. It whispered in her ears when the world outside grew too quiet. Every morning she woke to the sound of absence. Where laughter once echoed, there was nothing. Where soft cries once rose, there was only the faint rustle of wind through stone. Her arms felt heavy, as though they still remembered the weight of the child she had once held. But when she looked down, there was nothing there. She moved through the day like a shadow. She prepared food she did not eat. She cleaned floors that no one walked on. She kept the cradle polished and bright, though no baby would ever sleep in it, or so the world told her. Her people pitied her at first. They offered kind words, soft touches, and promises that life would return to her heart in time. But as the weeks became months, their kindness thinned. Their voices turned sharp. "Lyra, you must let go. Lyra, this grief will destroy you. She is gone. You must face the truth." But Lyra could not let go. Every night she sang. Every night she filled the air with her lullaby. Even when her throat burned, even when her voice cracked into silence, she continued. Because in her heart she felt something her people did not. The child was still alive. She had no proof. No message, no sign. Only instinct, only love. And love was stronger than reason. Still, grief weighed on her like a mountain. There were nights she collapsed beside the cradle, her body shaking with sobs until sleep claimed her. She dreamed of her daughter's face, round cheeks, soft eyes, a smile that promised a future. And then she woke, only to feel the cruel strike of reality. Some nights she blamed herself. If only I had held her tighter. If only I had run faster. If only I had fought harder. The questions never stopped. They were knives cutting into her mind, sharper than any blade. Other nights she blamed the war. Fire and smoke had swallowed her people's villages, and humans had marched with weapons in hand. Their boots shook the ground, their machines roared like beasts. The day she lost her child was the day humans burned through her world. Yes, she thought. The humans had taken everything. Her hate for them grew like a second shadow. Every time she saw a soldier's face in her memory, she clenched her fists until her nails broke skin. Every time she heard their name whispered in the village, she turned her head away with burning eyes. Her people whispered that the war was ending, that humans and her kind were beginning uneasy talks of peace. But peace meant nothing to her. Not when her baby was gone. Not when her cradle was empty. One evening, while the red sun dipped below the horizon, Lyra sat outside her home. She looked at the sky, painted in streaks of blood and gold, and felt a hollow ache inside her chest. Around her, families walked together. Children laughed. Parents carried them on their shoulders, their voices bright with love. The sound stabbed at her like a spear. She could not bear it. She turned away and closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against her knees. A neighbor woman approached, carrying her own child. She offered a kind smile, but her words were heavy with judgment. "Lyra, it is time to stop. Singing to the cradle will not bring her back." Lyra lifted her head, eyes burning with unshed tears. Her voice was soft but sharp as steel. "You do not understand. She is not gone." The neighbor shook her head, pity in her eyes, and walked away. Lyra was left with silence again. She returned inside. The cradle waited for her, shining in the dim light. She placed her hand on it, fingers trembling. "They do not know," she whispered. "But I know. I will not stop. I will never stop," and so the cycle continued. Each day drained her body. Each night drained her soul. Yet each night she sang. Her grief was no longer just sorrow. It was fuel. It kept her alive. It kept her eyes open, her spirit burning. The world wanted her to forget, to move on, but she refused. She would carry her grief until it broke her, or until it led her back to her child. And in the deepest part of her heart, a fragile flame of hope still flickered. That hope told her she would not sing to an empty cradle forever. But hope is dangerous. Hope can save, hope can destroy. That night, when she sang again, she thought she heard something beyond her walls, a faint echo, a sound too soft to be footsteps, too soft to be the wind. Her voice faltered. Her eyes darted to the door. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Not tonight," she whispered. "Not again." She forced herself to finish the lullaby, though her body shook. She clutched the cradle with both hands as though anchoring herself to the earth. The last note left her lips, trembling like a candle flame. And the silence that followed was heavier than ever. Night fell heavy upon the village. The stars above were sharp and cold, scattered across the sky like broken glass. Lyra sat in her home as she always did, beside the cradle that mocked her with its emptiness. Her song rose into the darkness, trembling but steady. She sang slower tonight. Each note seemed to cling to the air, unwilling to fade. Her voice filled the room, drifted out through the cracks in the walls, and spilled into the silence of the night beyond. When her song ended, silence returned, but it was not the same silence as before. Something was different. Her ears caught it first, a faint shift in the stillness. It was not wind. It was not the creak of wood or the whisper of leaves. It was heavier, more deliberate, a sound of steps. Her heart stuttered. She froze, listening. Again the sound came, a slow crunch of weight upon the dirt outside. Then another. Then another. Someone was moving near her home. Her throat tightened. Fear and anger flooded her veins at once. For weeks she had feared raiders might return. For months she had hated humans, imagining their faces sneering, their boots stomping across her people's land. She rose quietly, her body stiff with tension. Her hand found the blade she kept near the cradle. The handle was smooth from nights of clutching it, but tonight it felt heavier, as though it carried her grief and rage together. The sound grew clearer. Whoever it was, they were not trying to be quiet. Footsteps, steady and slow, came closer and closer. Her mind spun with possibilities. Could it be a neighbor? No, the hour was too late. Could it be an animal? No. The steps were too even, too careful. Then a thought struck her. Soldiers. Her breath caught. If it was soldiers, why here, why now? Her heart screamed at her to hide, but her spirit pushed her to stand tall. She had lost too much already. She would not bow again. The steps stopped. Her entire body trembled in the silence that followed. The air itself felt thick, as if holding its breath with her. She dared not move, dared not make a sound. The door creaked. It was not opened, not yet, just touched. The wood shivered as though a hand pressed against it from the outside. Lyra's grip on her blade tightened. Her chest rose and fell fast, too fast. She could feel the pulse in her throat like a drum. "Go away," she whispered, though her voice was no louder than the wind. The cradle rocked slightly as she bumped it with her knee. The sound of wood on stone echoed louder than it should have, and she cursed herself for making noise. The door creaked again, but then nothing. The silence stretched. Long, endless, cruel. Minutes passed, or perhaps only seconds. Time felt twisted, stretched thin under the weight of fear. Lyra's arms ached from holding the blade so tightly. Her breath burned in her chest. Finally, she forced herself to move. Step by step, she crept toward the door. Her bare feet made no sound on the floor. Her shadow danced across the walls, trembling as much as she did. She pressed her ear against the wood. At first, there was only her own heartbeat pounding. Then she heard it, breathing. Someone was standing just outside. Her jaw clenched. Rage swallowed her fear. "Humans!" she hissed under her breath. Her hand shook as she raised the blade. She would not let them take anything more from her. If they came for her tonight, she would fight. She would make them bleed. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps returned. Slow, retreating this time. The weight shifted away from her home. One step, another, another. She held her breath, listening. The sound grew faint, then disappeared into the distance. Gone. She leaned against the door, her strength draining at once. Her knees buckled, and she nearly fell. The blade slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The sound rang in the empty room like a bell. Her throat burned. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and bitter. Why had they come? Why had they stood there in silence? Watching, listening. She turned to the cradle, the sight of its emptiness cutting her deeper than ever. She rushed to it and sank beside it, pressing her forehead to its edge. "Why?" she whispered to the shadows. "Why torment me like this? Why take her and then return only to haunt me?" The cradle was silent, but in her heart, she thought she felt something. A whisper faint as the stars. A presence fragile but real. The grief swelled in her chest. She wanted to scream, to break the cradle apart, to end the nightly torture of song and silence. But her hands instead stroked the smooth wood, tender and desperate. She did not scream. She sang. Her voice broke with every note, cracked with every word, but still she sang. She sang to the empty cradle, to the darkness, to the ghosts that lingered outside her door. And though she did not know it, someone was still listening. The figure had not gone far. In the shadows at the edge of the village, he stood silent and still, holding something wrapped close against his chest. A tiny bundle. A child. Her child. The next night arrived heavy with silence. Lyra sat by the cradle, blade resting near her hand, her eyes fixed on the door. She had not forgotten the footsteps. She had not forgotten the presence that lingered just beyond the wood. Her song began once more, but her voice was sharper tonight, trembling with suspicion. Every word was a shield, every note a test. She wanted to see if the silence outside would answer her again, and it did. Halfway through the lullaby, she heard it, the faint crunch of footsteps, slow and steady. The air froze in her lungs. She stopped singing. The sound did not stop. Step by step, the presence returned. Closer. Heavier. More certain than the night before. Lyra grabbed her blade and rose, her body tense, her heart pounding. She stood between the door and the cradle, as if her very stance could keep the world away from what little she had left. The door creaked. Not gently this time. It moved beneath a hand pushing it open, and then, light. Moonlight spilled across the floor as the door opened wider. A figure entered, tall and broad, shoulders bent with exhaustion. His outline was strange, heavy with armor and cloth that did not belong to her people. Human. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her hate burned hotter than her fear. The stories, the raids, the fire, they all lived in her memory, and now one of them stood in her home. Leave, she hissed, her blade gleaming in the dim light. Her voice shook, but her hand was steady. Leave before I cut you down. The figure did not move closer. He stood in silence, his head bowed as if the weight of the world pressed upon his shoulders. Then slowly he lifted his arms. Lyra's eyes widened. He was holding something, a small bundle wrapped in coarse human cloth. A blanket, worn but warm. And within it, a tiny face. A child. Her child. Lyra's knees nearly gave way. Her blade trembled in her grip. She could not believe it. Her eyes blurred with sudden tears, but she did not blink. She feared if she blinked, the vision would vanish. The human stepped forward slowly, carefully, as though approaching a wild animal. His voice, when it came, was low and rough, carrying exhaustion and sincerity. She was alone, he said, crying, I could not leave her. Lyra's heart thundered. The words barely reached her through the storm in her mind. She wanted to rush forward, to snatch the child from his arms, to press her daughter to her chest and never let go. But another voice inside her screamed caution. This was a human, the enemy, the thief of her people's peace. What trick was this? What trap? Why? She spat, her voice sharp as her blade. Why bring her here? Why not kill her, as your kind kills everything? The human lowered his gaze. His arms tightened around the bundle, but not possessively, protectively. He looked almost ashamed. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe I am a coward. Maybe I am a traitor to my kind. But when I heard her cry, I could not walk away. I could not leave her in the ashes. Lyra's throat tightened. Ashes, yes, the fire. The chaos. She remembered, her eyes locked onto her daughter's face. The child stirred, soft sounds escaping her lips. The sound pierced through Lyra like light through darkness. The cradle was no longer empty, but still she did not lower her blade. The human stepped closer, one slow pace at a time. He kept his eyes lowered, showing no weapon, no threat. Only the bundle in his arms. Finally, when he was only a few feet away, he bent down on one knee. With careful hands, he lowered the child into the cradle. The wood creaked softly as it accepted the weight it had long been missing. Lyra gasped. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself to stand tall, blade still raised. Her daughter shifted in the cradle, small fingers curling, soft breaths filling the air. Lyra's song rose unbidden in her chest, but she swallowed it down. Her body trembled with the need to sing, the need to weep, the need to hold her child again. The human looked at her, finally lifting his face. His eyes were tired, shadowed with pain, but they were not cruel. She belongs with you, he said simply. I only kept her safe until I could bring her home. Lyra's blade slipped from her fingers. It fell to the floor with a dull clatter. She stumbled forward, her hands reaching for the cradle. Her daughter was warm, real, alive. Tears streamed down her face as she gathered the child in her arms, rocking her gently, pressing her lips to her soft skin. Her song broke free then, a lullaby that was no longer filled with despair but with trembling joy. For the first time in endless nights, the cradle was no longer empty. But even as she sang, her eyes never left the human. He stood there silent, watching. His face unreadable, his body still. Lyra's heart was torn in two. Gratitude and hatred warred within her. She wanted to thank him. She wanted to kill him. She wanted to drive him out, and she wanted him to stay. Her song faltered. Her child stirred in her arms, and she hushed her gently, kissing her brow. When she looked back up, the human had lowered his head again. He did not ask for thanks. He did not move to leave. He only stood there as if waiting for her judgment, and Lyra realized in that moment that the war outside had nothing to do with the war raging inside her heart. The cradle was no longer empty. The child lay within it, small and fragile, her breath soft as whispers. Lyra stood over her, hands trembling, tears running down her face. For so long she had dreamed of this moment, and now it was real. Her daughter had returned, but the joy was not clean. It was tangled with suspicion, with rage, with fear. The human still stood in the room. His shadow stretched across the floor, long and dark. Lyra's eyes flicked to him again and again, sharp as a hawk's. She clutched her daughter tightly, swaying, singing soft notes under her breath, but her voice quivered with unease. Finally, her words broke free. "Tell me," she demanded, her voice harsh. "Where did you find her? What did you do to her? Why is she alive in your arms and not mine?" The human's shoulders sagged. He lowered himself to the floor, sitting cross-legged, his hands open on his knees. He made no move toward her. His voice when he spoke was quiet but clear. "It was the night of fire," he said. "Your village burned. I was there, part of the unit that marched through." Lyra's stomach twisted. The image of flames, screams, and collapsing roofs seared her mind. Her grip on her daughter tightened until the child stirred and whimpered. The human raised his hand quickly. "Please do not be afraid. I will not hurt her. Listen." His words were strange, heavy with an accent, but they carried a rough honesty. Against her will, Lyra listened. "I was told to push forward, to leave no one behind. Orders." His jaw tightened at the word, but I heard a sound, small, weak, a cry. I followed it, against command. His eyes lifted, meeting hers. They were tired eyes, shadowed by war, but not cruel. She was there, alone, covered in ash, wrapped in a cloth. Still breathing, Lyra's vision blurred. She kissed her daughter's head, rocking her gently. "I took her," he continued. "I hid her under my coat. If my unit had seen, they would have left her, or worse. I could not allow that." Lyra's chest ached. Her blade still lay on the floor near her feet, but she no longer reached for it. The human's words burned with a strange kind of pain, the pain of truth. Still, she narrowed her eyes. Why risk your life for a child not your own? For the child of an enemy?" The human's lips parted, then closed again. He struggled for words. Finally, he looked down at his hands. "I don't know," he admitted. "War teaches us to stop asking why. But that night I remembered something. My sister, she had a child once, small like this. Both of them died in hunger years ago. I could do nothing then. But this time I could." His voice cracked, low and raw. "I could not leave her to die in the fire. I could not." Lyra's throat closed. She wanted to scream at him, to curse his kind, to pour her hate upon his head. But her heart shook. His words did not sound like lies. Her daughter cooed softly in her arms. Lyra kissed her again, eyes wet with tears. The human's voice dropped even lower. "I walked for days, hiding her, feeding her with what little I had. Every step I thought I would fail. Every night I thought she would slip away. But she fought. She lived. She waited for you." The room felt too small, too heavy. Lyra paced, her song gone now, replaced by the thundering of her heart. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to hate him. Both burned in her chest like fire and ice. "Do you think this makes you good?" She spat suddenly, her words sharp. "Do you think one act of mercy cleans the blood from your hands? From your people's hands?" The human flinched. He did not defend himself. His gaze stayed lowered. "No, I am not good. I am only tired. Tired of death. Tired of fire. Tired of being told mercy is weakness." He raised his head then, his voice firmer. "I did not come for thanks. I did not come for forgiveness. I came because she is yours, not mine. Because she belongs in your arms. And because if I died tomorrow, at least I would know I saved one life." Lyra's breath caught. The cradle between them seemed to glow in the dim light, the child's soft breaths filling the silence. She looked down at her daughter, safe in her arms, alive, because of him. Her hatred did not vanish. Her grief did not fade, but for the first time doubt entered her walls of rage. The human remained still, waiting for her to strike or to shout or to send him away. But Lyra did none of these things. She sank to her knees beside the cradle, clutching her daughter tightly. Tears poured freely, hot and unending. Her lullaby returned, broken but real, spilling into the night with trembling strength. The human listened in silence, his face unreadable. And as she sang, Lyra realized the truth was both gift and wound. The gift, her daughter was alive. The wound, it was a human hand that had saved her. The lullaby ended, but the silence it left was louder than the song itself. Lyra sat on her knees, her child safe in her arms, her heart pounding like war drums. Across the room, the human waited. He did not move, did not speak. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a weight she could not read. The blade still lay between them, glinting faintly in the pale moonlight. Her gaze darted from the cradle to the human, then back to her daughter. Every thought split her in two. One side screamed for vengeance. Kill him, spill his blood. He is the enemy, the reason for the fire, the reason for her endless nights of grief. The other side whispered of mercy, of strange gratitude, of the life he had carried back to her arms. Her fingers tightened around her daughter, who shifted softly and let out a tiny sigh. The sound cut deeper than any sword. How could such innocence exist in a world filled with hate? The human broke the silence first. Do what you must, he said, his voice low, steady. If you wish to kill me, then kill me. I will not fight. But let me leave knowing she is safe. Lyra's throat tightened. His words only fed the storm inside her. If he had begged, she could have despised him. If he had boasted, she could have hated him. But surrender felt like something else. She rose to her feet slowly, her daughter still in her arms. Her free hand reached down and picked up the blade. Its weight was familiar, but tonight it felt heavier than ever. The human did not move. He simply lowered his head, exposing his neck. Her heart pounded faster. She lifted the blade, her hand shaking. She could strike now, end it, and no one would question her. A human in her home, an enemy at her door, it would be justice. It would be vengeance. But her daughter stirred again, opening her eyes for the first time since she had been laid in the cradle. The baby looked at her mother's face, then at the human kneeling nearby. Her small lips curved in a faint, innocent smile. The blade trembled in Lyra's hand. Her daughter did not know of war, did not know of hatred, did not know of vengeance. She knew only warmth, only safety, only love. Lyra's song rose in her throat again, unbidden, but this time it was different. It was not a song of despair. It was a song of decision. Her hand shook violently. She raised the blade higher. The human closed his eyes, ready, and then, with a cry, she dropped it. The blade clattered against the floor, the sound echoing like thunder. Her knees gave way, and she sank down, clutching her daughter tight. Tears poured from her eyes, spilling onto the child's blanket. I cannot, she whispered, her voice breaking. I cannot. The human opened his eyes slowly. His breath left him in a shudder, but he did not smile, did not move. He only bowed his head. You are stronger than I, he said softly. Stronger than all of us. Lyra shook her head, her tears unstoppable. No, I am only tired of death. The room grew quiet again, but it was no longer the silence of emptiness. It was a silence full of fragile life. The child's tiny hand reached out, brushing against her mother's cheek. Lyra kissed it, her sobs softening into trembling breaths. She looked at the human again, her eyes burning with conflict. I should send you away, she whispered. I should scream for the guards, for the neighbors. You would not survive the night. The human nodded. I know. Then why stay? His answer came without hesitation. Because leaving her in silence would be worse. I needed to see her safe, even if it means my end. Her chest ached. She had hated humans all her life. But this man before her did not match the image she carried. He was not a monster. He was weary, broken, yet somehow still human enough to care for a child not his own. She turned to the cradle and gently laid her daughter down once more. The child's eyes closed, her breath even, her tiny fingers curled in peace. Lyra's song rose again, filling the room with softness. The human listened in silence, his face unreadable. When the lullaby ended, Lyra spoke again. Her voice was sharp but softer than before. You will leave, she said. When the dawn comes, you will walk away, and I will not stop you. But if you return, if you bring soldiers, if you bring death again, I swear on my daughter's life I will cut you down. The human bowed his head once more. I will not return with soldiers. I will not bring death. Only life if I can. Her eyes narrowed, suspicious, but she did not argue. She leaned against the cradle, exhaustion washing over her body. Her daughter's breathing filled the silence, steady and calm. And for the first time in endless nights, Lyra allowed her eyes to close, not in despair, but in something close to peace. The human remained where he was, silent, waiting. His choice had already been made, but hers was only beginning. Because mercy was not the end of war. Mercy was the beginning of something else. Something dangerous. Dawn crept into the sky like a slow fire, spilling pale gold through the cracks of Lyra's home. The night of tension had passed, but its shadow still lingered. The cradle was no longer empty. Her daughter slept inside, her tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Lyra sat close, never letting her eyes stray far from the child. Every breath of the baby was a miracle, every twitch of her fingers a blessing. For weeks she had sung to silence. Now the silence was broken by life again, and yet, not all was peace. The human remained. He had not moved through the night. He sat cross-legged against the far wall, watching quietly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile thread of calm. His armor was dented, his clothes torn, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, but he had not closed them. He had stayed awake, guarding in silence as if the child's safety was still his burden. Lyra studied him in the weak morning light. She had sworn to kill any human who crossed her path. She had cursed their names, prayed for their destruction. But this one, he was different. He did not carry himself like a conqueror. He carried himself like a man carrying his own grave. When her daughter stirred, Lyra bent forward and lifted her gently into her arms. The child pressed her face against her mother's chest, sighing softly. Lyra hummed, the tune gentle and warm. The human's eyes softened at the sound. Lyra caught the look and narrowed her gaze. Do not pretend you belong here, she said. Her voice was cold, though her grip on her daughter trembled. You are the reason I lost her. You are the reason I sang to an empty cradle. The human lowered his head. I know. Then why save her? Lyra pressed. Why risk your life for a child of the enemy? You could have left her. No one would have known. No one would have cared. He lifted his face, and for the first time there was a faint strength in his eyes. Because I would have known, and I would have cared. The words struck her deeper than she expected. Lyra turned away, rocking her daughter slowly. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to see only the monster. But his voice kept tearing holes in the wall she had built around her heart. Humans destroy, she said bitterly. That is all you know. The soldier was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his words were soft, but they carried weight. Maybe most of us do. Maybe war has burned us hollow, but not all humans are the same. Some still remember what it means to protect, to care, to choose life even when everything around us screams for death. Lyra looked down at her daughter. The child opened her eyes briefly, gazing up with innocent wonder before drifting back into sleep. Her voice broke when she whispered, I almost killed you. I know, he replied. And I would not have blamed you. The honesty in his tone made her chest ache. She laid her daughter back in the cradle, smoothing the blanket around her. For the first time in so long, the cradle looked right. Complete. Not a wound, but a promise. Lyra turned back to the soldier. You will leave when the sun rises. If my people see you, they will kill you. I may not stop them, he nodded. I expected nothing less. She studied him one last time. His body was scarred, but his eyes held no cruelty. Instead, they carried something she had not expected to see in a human. Mercy. As the sun broke fully over the horizon, light spilled across the cradle, painting it in gold. Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest. She reached down and stroked her daughter's cheek, whispering the last line of her lullaby. The human rose slowly, his movements heavy with fatigue. He stepped toward the door, but before leaving he turned back. Take care of her, he said. Lyra's voice was sharp but not cruel. I always will. She is my heart, my future. For a moment their eyes met. Enemy and enemy, mother and soldier. No peace treaty signed, no war ended. But in that moment something shifted. Lyra spoke, her words soft but certain. My people will never believe the story. They will never believe a human saved what I could not. The soldier gave a faint smile. Then keep the truth for yourself. All I need is to know she is safe. He turned and stepped into the sunlight. His shadow stretched long behind him as he walked away, each step slow but steady. Lyra watched him go. She wanted to call out, to curse him, to thank him, but she did none of these things. She simply stood by the cradle, her hand resting on its edge, her song humming low. Her daughter slept peacefully, unaware of the war outside, unaware of the storm inside her mother's heart. As the soldier disappeared into the distance, Lyra whispered to the sleeping child, "They say humans are monsters. But perhaps one of them was different. Perhaps one of them remembered what it means to save, not to destroy." Her voice shook as tears filled her eyes again, not of grief this time, but of something she had not felt in years. Hope. The cradle rocked softly, no longer empty, no longer silent. And for the first time, Lyra's song was not a cry of sorrow. It was a lullaby of peace.